Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are across the nation, around the globe. This is Beacon News, and I am your hostess with the mostest, Kelly Robertson, aka Earthsong Lovecraft. Today, I want to share an interview with you that Linda Moulton Howe did with a gentleman, I believe is military, if I remember correctly, who had some encounters with the tall whites who predict some big event for Earth. I want you to listen to the story, and I want you to keep in mind that though he presumes that this will be nuclear, that his presumptions themselves could be wrong, and that this could in fact have something to do with a cyclical planetary event to take place where the powers that be and the countries at large who are in charge are under control of specific alien races who wish to conquer us, much like the Romans did. So I'm going to share with you this rebroadcast from Linda Moulton Howe about something called Detachment 3 at Edwards Air Force Base. No, I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with that. That's just an extra bit there I'm reading. But it's about the big event and the tall whites, for sure.
Hi, everyone. Since last week's podcast about tall white extraterrestrials and their...
I apologize for the lag. They've been jamming my signal quite a bit the past few days.
allies, Nordic extraterrestrials, we've received more than 400 comments and messages from you all about some of your experiences. And in a few minutes, I'm going to share some important comments from a military aerospace source that contacted me after last week's podcast. But first, today, April 19th, 2023, the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee's Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee held a new hearing on unidentified aerial phenomena, also known as UAP/UFOs. And this is only the second congressional hearing in more than 50 years about UFO/UAPs after a very feeble hearing last May of 2022. The only person called to speak before today's Senate subcommittee hearing is the co-author of a recent 5-page academic paper entitled Physical Constraints on Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. The paper featured in this Politico April 14th, 2023 article last week hypothesizes that the Oumuamua extraterrestrial object, after its rapid travel through our solar system in September to October of 2017, might have been an extraterrestrial scout craft. The co-authors are Sean Kirkpatrick, PhD, head of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, also known by the acronym AARO, who collaborated with Harvard professor of astronomy Avi Loeb, PhD. Professor Loeb was the first scientist to propose the strangely shaped and accelerating object, quote, could potentially be a parent craft that releases many small probes during its close passage to Earth, meaning Oumuamua could have been a scout ship for an extraterrestrial civilization checking up on our solar system with many small probes. The Aero Office in the Pentagon was created in 2022 to replace a previous Office of Naval Intelligence, also trying to understand the implications of hundreds of reports of unidentified aerial phenomena that are monitored by Earth humans as performing highly advanced maneuvers that humans cannot do. An example is a UFO traveling at 12,000 miles an hour and then before this briefing hearing today, U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has been frustrated that during a March 28, 2023 meeting about the Department of Defense budget request for fiscal year 2024, there was no funding for the Pentagon's Aero Office, provoking Senator Gillibrand to say, quote, "The lack of full funding for Aero is a significant concern. We need to ensure that our government is taking the UAP issue seriously and dedicating the necessary resources to improve our understanding and response capabilities with unidentified aerial phenomena," close quote. And now I'm going to share with you comments that I received from a military aerospace source after last week's Earth Files podcast. Quote,
Now, before she begins with that, she was talking about 2017. In 2017, we had a solar eclipse that went across the United States. From Washington State to Florida, across Missouri and a little bit of Illinois as the center point. That was the same year that Oumuamua came through, that they believed to be a scout of an unknown intelligence outside of our planet. Now, my research about Planet X and it being a binary star system leads me to believe very firmly that 2017 was its first close pass of Earth. And it took it 3 years to get past Earth, around the sun, and come back past us again. Hence the new eclipse, solar eclipse, due to happen April 8th, where something creates an eclipse between us and the sun, and at the same time we see a comet that has wings and a tail that, interestingly enough, has been warned and foretold to us by the Sumerians, the Mayans, numerous others. And so I ask you to consider, as you listen to this story, about the tall whites, because the tall whites and the Nordics, or Pleiadians, if you will, are both good guys, as well as some grays are good. And they are all about team humanity. I know this for a fact. And they have been, indeed, trying to warn of an impending big event to come, where all have been shown cataclysms and horrific things to happen, fire in the sky and such, colors in the sky that we've not seen before. And according to my knowledge that I came here with, and my wisdom that I've gained through research, that will be due to our Earth's shields going down as our sun duels with its little brother. So please keep that in mind as you listen to the events that this man will describe.
Linda, the tall white extraterrestrials do live in the 82G Eridani solar system, 20 light years from Earth. Tall whites inhabit 2 of at least 3 planets that orbit the 82G Eridani star, and they are cataloged as Planet 482 and Planet 582. The tall whites are very intelligent and teach us how to correctly plot stellar points of navigation in deep space quantum tunneling. Tall whites do ally with some Nordic species. There are 9 different variations of the Nordic blonde-haired,
9.
blue-eyed, pale-skinned race of
9 of them.
ETs, similar to the human race on Earth that has Caucasian, Negroid, Asian races of Homo
Look at those funny dudes on the
sapiens.
other side there
Some
with
Nordics
their long,
inhabit the
skinny
binary
legs.
star system Procyon A and B, only 11.45 light years from Earth. They also inhabit the binary star system Sirius A and B, only 8.611 light.
Now I want you to please pay attention to where this says reptilian now, but originally Nordics be, before Procyon Exodus. And I want you to take that as truth with a grain of salt. Because I know for a fact, and so does Linda, that the Lizzie people have the ability now to look like the Nordics. Can we say V, anyone? Remember that show?
Light years from Earth. All 3 USS LeMay, Hillenkoetter, and Vandenberg deep space craft were built the same, except the Hoyt Vandenberg is bigger to accommodate larger equipment payloads. All 3 can be offensive or defensive if necessary. Currently, with the help of the Tall White and Nordics, the USS Curtis LeMay and the USS Hillenkoetter have been to 28 catalog solar systems in our spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy.
28 of them.
Close quote. In addition to my last week's interview with Benji in Melbourne, Australia, about his face-to-face physical encounter with a tall white in Sydney back in 1998 during the Leonid meteor shower then, recently, I also interviewed Bruce Solheim, PhD.
Forgive me, I have to interject here that the Leonid meteor shower of that time, as well as Comet Elenin, are both vitally, intricately important to this binary system I speak of.
4-year-old distinguished professor of history at Citrus College in Glendora, California. He was also a Fulbright professor and scholar in 2003 at the University of Tromsø in northern Norway. He earned a PhD in history from Bowling Green State University in 1993, and his bio says Bruce was the first person in his family of hardworking Norwegian immigrant parents to go to college. And he served 6 years in the U.S. Army, becoming a helicopter pilot. His official bio also states, quote, Bruce has been abducted several times, has seen UFOs, and continues to have contact with alien beings, close quote. And one of those
Possibly
alien beings is a tall white featured in Professor Solheim's book, Anzar, the Progenitor, released in 2021. The cover of this book, he told me, was done because the publishing house thought that Anzar should be more mysterious. The dark cloak was for the book cover, and in fact that this is a tall white, as we have seen through previous reports. And that the first encounter that Bruce Solheim had with this being was in
They dramatized it
1964
for the
when
book.
he was
This
only
is why
6 years
part of
old
why I
in
didn't finish mine.
Kenmore, Washington, living within a quarter mile of a Nike missile base. Then there were a number of Nike missile bases in a ring around Seattle because of Department of Defense work at Boeing and the Todd shipyard.
Did she say Nike?
Professor Solheim's book, Anzar, the Progenitor, released in 2021. The cover of this book, he told me, was done because the publishing house thought that Anzar should be more mysterious, but that in fact the dark cloak was for the book cover, and in fact that this is a tall white, as we have seen through previous reports. And that the first encounter that Bruce Solheim had with this being was in 1964 when he was only 6 years old in Kenmore, Washington, living within a quarter mile of a Nike missile base.
Nike.
Then there were a number of Nike missile bases in a ring around Seattle
Nike.
because of Department of Defense work at Boeing and the Todd shipyard.
Just do it.
That in 1964, the tall white he first saw was in the form of a three-dimensional hologram in the backyard that warned 6-year-old Bruce about a child molester in the neighborhood. And the warning was correct.
Do you know? Actually, haven't heard this video yet. It just grabbed me and I made a video. I just like intuitively, instinctively hit record and started making a video on this. I have not listened to this yet. But my friend, my very good friend, and I both have had experiences like that when we were very small children, where aliens warned us of neighborhood predators and showed us. Like almost like an out of body experience where we remote viewed and we could see in through the roof of their house and see what was taking place. Showed us to warn us.
Decades later, in 1997, another holographic form similar to what Professor Solheim remembered from his 1964 childhood encounter appeared again in front of him as a slowly turning three-dimensional hologram that was suspended in the air. And the holographic being said that his name was Anzar. When you look up Anzar in
Sounds a lot like Anshar.
you will find that it is an Arabic word that stands for the angel of paradise. During that 1997 holographic communication, Anzar also told Bruce that he was, quote, a progenitor, close quote.
A creator.
Tall white civilization, perhaps working with the Nordics. In 2023, both Professor Solheim and Benji in Australia have received telepathic
Both of them.
about a dangerous big event that will impact
solar
Earth.
events.
Projection for Professor Bruce Solheim, but at least 2 face-to-face tall white physical encounters for Benji in Sydney and Melbourne, Australia. Have you ever stood face-to-face physically with Anzar or any tall white?
No, not physically. It's always in some type of form, some type of either a thought form or a holographic type image. I can tell you this, that recently in my contact with Anzar, we've been talking about what he calls the big event. And there's noticeably, and I'm not the only one noticing this, there's a lot of retrocausality going on. There's a lot of weird things going on simultaneously that don't seem to make much sense. And everybody seems to be moving in opposite directions and not necessarily working together, whether it's here or in the world or
Keep you busy. Keep you busy here, keep you busy there, so that we can't all come together collectively for what is really, truly the big event. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, our favorite 17th letter of the alphabet taught many of us that. And if you're not on board with that and you don't like that kind of language, then you need to click off because you're not my people. You're not my people. You're not awake enough. So click off now. But I've often wondered, because of the things that the 17th letter of the alphabet would say and the way it was worded, if they're not, in fact, an alien intelligence rather than a human intelligence, because the things that they offer and the way they word it are very much the way that I've been taught my entire life by the outside intelligent influences. Very distinctly similar. Open your mind. Step outside your box.
wherever. What happens, my understanding, is this big event, which is just the part here on Earth, is just part of a
Mm,
larger cosmic thing that's
indeed.
going on.
Because this is not even just a solar system event. This is a ripple effect that echoes into, I want to say the eons, but I really mean the parallel universes. It affects all of them, all of the many worlds in the many parallel universes, and it affects all of the planets in our solar system, including the secondary portion of it that we, the majority, doesn't even know exists, as well as other star systems. It's a ripple effect, much like a nuclear event would affect others, because it rips a hole in the space time continuum, which is certainly what the CERN type people may be intending to acquire for various purposes, with DARPA involved.
What is the big cosmic event that will impact us?
Well, the projection of the conflict between different alien races has been spilling over onto Earth, so that their conflict is here, different sides to be taken.
Well,
Can you
that's
explain
true.
this? Because it reminds me of a sentence by a Defense Intelligence Agency analyst in December of 1999. He said, Linda, World War II was an extraterrestrial war fought through.
Yep.
About to happen.
And if you don't understand that, I have to be so careful how I word this. The ones who were perpetrated and pinned as the bad guy weren't necessarily the bad guy, because they knew who the true bad guy is, that's connected to the money, and had certain machines in place that could see you clearly for who you are. No mask involved. And were trying to exterminate the roaches, if you will. And the rest of them who wanted the money and the fame and the glory and the power, said, "Oh, we can't let him do that. So let's do this and paint him as the bad guy." And forevermore, all of the sacred symbols can be tainted and perverted and forbidden, and we can imbue fear in them for anyone who dare to look at such knowledge, to keep them downtrodden, keep them from waking up. And again, this is just my conjecture of wild theories. I could totally be wrong. And it's really only for entertainment purposes only, right?
I'll give you an example. On 9/11, me and
Such a
a
touchy
million other
subject.
people who are very sensitive had terrible nightmares that
Mm.
morning. For me, I didn't see buildings. I just saw the world kind of starting to crumble. It was made of sand and everything was just
It
crumbling
was the
apart. And I
beginning
woke up in a
of her
panic.
culmination
And
of
a couple hours
crumbling,
later,
for sure.
and that set off a series of events. Well, this big event is much bigger than that because it's not just here on Earth. And
Yeah.
because things move forward and backwards in time.
The tall whites can move backwards and forwards in time, and they know then
Yes, they
about this
can.
big event.
Yes.
What are the tall whites doing? What have they shown you is going to happen off planet and here? And what are they doing perhaps to counter it?
Well, Anzar always tells me this involves what a lot of people in the intelligence agencies would know, that there's a new tripartite pact that is formed, mainly with China and Russia and Iran, but they have some help. It's not just them.
Like from who? From reptilians, from insects?
I'm not exactly sure which alien groups, but they can only help China and Russia and Iran. Can only help them so much. And so the tall whites and those that are supportive of trying to help us have to not only deal with their alien counterparts, but also with the people here on Earth who are being manipulated. It involves nuclear stuff.
Mm.
I've seen imagery in my visions of
That's just a
explosions.
looming
I hear them, I see
threat
them.
to keep you unaware and looking at that as our most dangerous scenario.
Smell them. One time I had a vision of an explosion so powerful that it turned the sky into like a rainbow, but the rainbow was a rainbow of radiation emanating from the mountains and destroying the mountains and moving towards us, and there was really no place to hide.
Have you seen what you think is a nuclear atomic explosion in the skies of the Earth?
Yes,
Where?
it's in my vision. I was in some type of a military base while this was happening, and there were mountains in the distance, and that's where the rainbow emanations began and then moved like a wave towards us. And this is so beyond what I can really understand. Those are the images that I get, and I hear these things too. I hear explosions, and like I said, I can smell.
Okay, I just want to pause him right there because he even admits that he isn't for sure that that's why he's seeing what he's seeing. He's just presuming to the best of his ability. So, no fault to him. I'm not trying to put him down whatsoever. Whatsoever. However, the rainbows of colors that we are going to see are much likened to the aurora borealis. And why do we see that? Because that's where the shields of the planet are less than. That's where all of the solar energy comes in. Our shields are going to be down, and we're going to see this kind of stuff in skies of areas that have never witnessed an aurora borealis. ever, because our shields are down. And there's an inbound star that wants to compete in war with our main star. And we shall witness this. So keep that in perspective as you listen.
This kind of odd smell, ionization smell. And the images are so horrific that I want to not remember them.
Yeah.
I don't want to acknowledge them, but I do write them down in my journal as best I can.
Are you able to lay down at night and say, Anzar, I am in the sky of Earth? Can you tell me if this is going to happen, when, or are you and the tall whites going to be able to stop it?
Well, I have asked about it, and he always says things like there are many variables. He said you can't always predict when. The best you can do, the best I can do, is to prepare.
What specifically has he been
Specifically, in 2004, I was shown a vision of all of this earthly cataclysm and amazing colors in the sky. Smoke and fire and brimstone, complete with the screams of the people who fear their impending death. But it was not because of nuclear war. It was because the Earth was undergoing a massive pole shift. Because its shields had went down due to our binary star being in very close proximity. But then I was also shown an alternative route, the high road of the Hopi, where we know ourselves and we walk in that power. And we focus on the shields being intact around our planet, lessening the damages. We focus on the tsunamis dispersing and calming and lessening. We focus on the earthquakes moving out into fractals and fractions on the sides to diffuse the energy of the detonation point, if you will. We part the storms. We use the seals that were given to us, the tools that are provided to utilize a more optimal outcome. Rather than this alternative.
showing you? Can you go into details and explain that more?
Yeah. Event is that there's a physical war here in this dimension between us and the Chinese, especially.
Mm. Well,
and Iran.
I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, but the first that was named, they've had a target on us for a while, since the 70s, with the Disney stickers with LSD on them.
Shouldn't come as a big surprise to people,
And they
But
worship
that
the
is going
dragon
to
people.
spiral out of control. It's going to start non-nuclear, and it's going to advance
They
as
love the
one
gold.
side begins to kind of fall behind or start to lose.
They want the power.
They're going to have the option, the nuclear option. So that is what I'm seeing, and that is what I've been told is going to happen. The tall whites and the ones that are trying to help us are going to try to minimize the ability of the tripartite group that I mentioned. So it will be limited nuclear war.
And furthermore, nuclear war will never happen because the aliens have already proven time and time again for decades that they have the ability, capability, and certainly the free will to shut down our nukes at the missile sites of military bases worldwide at any given time. So that is not what's going to take place, I assure you, because that's a ripple effect for them too. They won't let that happen. But what happens here on planet Earth, that's dependent upon us because we are who we've been waiting for, and it's our free will choice. Do we sink or do we swim?
Removing our atmosphere or anything like that, but it'll be bad enough. It'll make things unlivable in certain areas.
That the tall whites have basically promised our government that they will prevent all
See,
nuclear events.
Linda knows.
My understanding is that they can't shut it completely down.
Yes,
There's
they
also
can.
such a thing as an accident. Maybe there's not an intention, or there's kind of a madman theory that can happen, or they're
I
nuclear
think he's reaching.
sites like a
I think
Chernobyl
he's
type of.
reaching and grasping for straws so that he can make sense of what he thinks he knows. And that's perfectly normal, common human nature. I'm, again, not faulting the guy, not trying to diss him in any way of respect. None. But that's conjuncture, and it would not hold up in a court of law.
Event could also be devastating as well. But from what I understand, it's limited. And this idea of free will, the idea that if they protect us from everything and do everything for us, kind of like a parent doing for a child, this is the way it was explained to me, that the child learns nothing.
And that is true.
You got to let the
That's
child
true.
get
That's why
hurt,
we came
not
in mass this time, in large numbers as volunteers, because we don't want that same bullshit of a reluctant Messiah and a martyr. Can't have that this time. This time, you have to understand how to wake up on your own and own your shit and own your God given power.
what they're doing so they can learn their lesson.
In your book, near the beginning, you have this quote: time is
Oh,
not
yeah.
an arrow, it is a boomerang, close
It
quote.
is. Time is a boomerang. Time repeats itself. History repeats itself. Now, does history repeat itself again with another cataclysm that many of our ancients have wrote about and tried to warn us about so that we could level up and do different and be better this time than they were, even the Atlanteans? It's free will. It's completely free will. And it's perfectly okay with all of them and myself. If you choose otherwise, you just learn your lesson the hard way. So, which do you choose? Level up or learn the hard way? It's not a threat, it's fact. It's a damn fact. Read your history, read your mythology, read your folklore, educate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Can you that and apply it to where we are right now in April of 2023 with the whole planet worried about nuclear war?
Yeah, so the idea of linear time versus time like a boomerang comes back, this circular version of time that tomorrow is
Cyclical
yesterday, and
karmic
this idea
lessons.
that it's all connected, that everything is happening at once. And our concept is like an arrow, like you shoot an arrow, it goes in a certain direction. But really, it's more
Damn it.
like a boomerang because it comes right back around.
Has the tall white Anzar used words to you that we, meaning the tall whites, we can manipulate time well enough to stop or neutralize something like a potential nuclear war on Earth, because we do not want to see laboratory Earth destroyed.
Well, they're doing what they can, but there is a limitation. And it's not that they can't stop it completely. It's just that there has to be an element of free will. Otherwise,
They won't stop it because we have to know that we are who we've been waiting for. They're not going to be our reluctant Messiah either. They don't want to be. So if aliens come showing up in big cities and say we come in peace and we offer you this and that and the other, beware of false prophets. Because the true good guys, they don't fuck with free will. They want you to learn. They really are the true big brother and big sister. They are real family that actually cares about you growing up.
control, and that's the problem. That's the dilemma. You have to allow them to make mistakes, not let them make such serious mistakes that we wipe out the entire planet or what all civilization.
Also, as well,
It'll be
I'll wait.
bad enough. That's my crude understanding.
Do you have any visual impressions in your mind about the physical war that is taking place beyond Earth? Who is fighting who in this solar system and in the Milky Way galaxy and beyond? What ETs are fighting each other that it ends up causing war
It's
here on
spiritual.
Earth as well?
It seems clear to me, in my experience, the reptilians are, to put it in
Ding,
our
ding, ding.
terms that I kind of understand, as good guys or bad guys or in between guys, whatever, that the reptilians are not the good guys.
That's
Let's
correct.
just put it that way. My experience that I've
100%.
had with them, they're very powerful and very manipulative and not very friendly and don't seem to have our best interests
At all.
at heart.
They don't give a
So
shit.
who they're helped by
They
could be, I get this
don't
idea
give
that
a
there's
fuck.
some grays that are okay or more neutral, and then there are some that are more along with the reptilians. That's as far as
And
I
that's
know.
true too.
And what is
That's true too,
of
because
the
just like there's 9 variations of Nordics or Pleiadians, there's a multitude of grays that all get lumped in the same category that are not really in the same category. Some are friends, some are foe, and some are like Switzerland and they're just damn neutral. They don't give a fuck either way. They're just here for the show and eating the popcorn.
dispute among extraterrestrials that is leading up to this huge event that's dangerous?
I think it has everything to do with this concept of free will. I think that's exactly what it's about. It's really between having or being controlled. And it kind of mimics, in some ways, our own terrestrial version of that. This idea of, do you want a free society or a completely controlled society? And I think even the so-called bad guys think that total control is the way to go, because you don't want humans or lesser creatures, as they might say, to have any free will. It's symbolic.
Sorry, it just dawned on me that maybe you can't even see me. I don't know if I'm pinned or not. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Symbolically represented with how our terrestrial world. There are those that think that a totalitarian system or an authoritarian system is more efficient, is better. And maybe they even think that's right. Maybe they don't think they're wrong. In fact, I
They don't.
know people who don't
They
think that's
don't
wrong.
think they're wrong.
Although every fiber of my being tells me that this idea of
We think they
love
are.
and this idea of free will is extremely important to our soul and to the development of our soul and to our next evolutionary step. Hence our
Definitely.
call.
Our revelation. What do we call that last book of the Bible?
And so I think that it can be put in very simplistic terms, like the forces of light versus the forces of darkness. But
There's
what's interesting is that
yin
the
and
forces
yang.
of darkness don't really think they're
They
bad.
don't. They think they're in the
That's
wrong
the key
or in
to
the
the whole
right.
thing. They think that that is the way things should be. The Russian government or the Chinese Communist Party or Iran's theocracy, they think that that type of control is what we should have. That is the best model.
And what Anzar is implying, that revelation souls to survive and be strong, you must live lives that are free.
Yeah, and have that balance, obviously, that those that are out of control, that are just exercising their own free will without regard for other people, that's
Has to be
always
service
operate
to
from a
others.
position of love as a free person. Free will doesn't mean you can go and do whatever you want to other people, because then you're defying this idea of love of self and love of others. And that's the very difficult balance that we
It is a very difficult balance. And I'm going to just bring up here that this is actually the very real, fundamental foundation of the problem of being able to love thyself. And you cannot truly, fully know thyself if you don't love yourself. And we are taught that it is selfish to love ourselves. It's selfish to feed our needs, not our wants, our needs. And that's very untrue. You have to honor self, the good and the bad of you, and not entertain the bad, but entertain the good and feed your soul. And if you don't feed your soul, then your cup is not full enough to feed other souls. And how do you feed other souls? Through service of others. And you need that self-service, self-love in place in a proper, non-egotistical way in order to fully, truly be of service to others. Because that changes your perspective. You no longer are looking at people as what is their angle. It doesn't matter their angle. Either you will intuitively know to help them, or you will intuitively know to walk away. And you will trust that. And that is honoring the self. And that is learning true discernment. And that leads to fulfillment of all who truly deserve and are worthy of your service. And it eliminates the nefarious, the gangster liars, thieves, betrayers, mask wearing people. It eliminates them, gives them nothing to feed off of. No food for you. It's like the soup Nazi on Seinfeld. No soup for you.
we all face, and that they're, I think, trying in making this leap of consciousness, not a leap of faith, but a
Right.
leap of consciousness. Freedom comes with a price. So it's something
Everything
that you can't
comes with a price,
take for
dear.
granted, whether it's here on Earth or I think in the cosmos. A free person with discipline is what we're striving for in this leap of consciousness, realizing that where the boundaries are between your freedom of action and somebody else's freedom of
See?
action, and realizing that where one intermingles with the other, and that's the love part.
If the tall whites showed up in front of you physically today, tonight, tomorrow, would you go with them onto their craft?
Oh, sure.
And you feel an alliance?
Yeah. Well, it's an integration. That's what Ansar calls it, integration. And it was frightening at first. When I first started, in fact, the
It's a good
shaman
word for it.
who saw Ansar behind me at that meeting I was at talked about an integration. He said, that can be a very scary thing, a very
True.
me for a very long time. So I have a trust. I have a common history, and I feel a connection. He was asking about this integration, and I was very specific. I said, well, does that mean I no longer exist in my form that I am now and taking care of my family and all that? And he said, no, you're going to continue to exist. The integration comes at a higher level of consciousness. That's where it has to happen.
And you have the impression that the tall whites move dimensions, that when they're here physically, they're in third dimensional matter, but that they go
Mm-hmm.
into other higher dimensions, and that's how they can move around the universe in what we seconds.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, that is not a barrier.
And have you on their craft when it was doing dimensional leaps?
I was on a craft that, and this was another vision, but the craft launched from a military base, and there was somebody in a uniform on board, but I knew it was an alien craft, and I know it was one of the good guys, so it was one of the tall whites or Anzar's allies. But the
And that's
craft, as
important to note
soon as
too.
we were inside, the walls of the craft, the round walls disappeared, and it was translucent. You could see through it. You could see everything everywhere in every direction. And then it started to move, and it moved at this incredible speed, and nobody knew we were even there.
That's a very important piece of information for you to take note of because there are good guys in the military, white hats, who work with the good aliens. As well, there were good projects such as MK Ultra that were performed on some children, and I'm going to just say star seeds. I don't know that it was only star seeds, but I do know that they sought out the star seeds to hone their abilities and to assist in the mission because the mission is one and the same. All of us are on the same page with the mission and the goal to save humanity and the planet from utter destruction and control. I have reason to believe that Eisenhower actually put that in place before I was ever born and became a volunteer. But there were good programs. There were good MK Ultra programs, not just the bad ones that you hear about. And that's very important to keep in mind because they always tell you the ounce of truth and never the whole truth. There's two sides to every coin, always.
Currently, the Federation of American Scientists reports, quote, estimated global nuclear warhead inventories in 2023 are in 9 countries that include Russia at 5,889, China at 410, the United States at 5,244, and so far, none reported publicly in Iran. May none of us on Earth ever see one of these horrible nuclear warheads exploding anywhere on this beautiful blue planet again. And I now want to share with you an email that I received last night from Benji in Melbourne, Australia. I shared with him some of Professor Solheim's story. And Benji, who is also from Northern European bloodline, emailed back to me, quote, he, Professor Solheim, having a Norwegian background too, and myself, I am sure having Northern European blood has something to do with how the tall whites are tracking people like us down. I am, like Linda, curious about those who have had contact with the tall whites. That is regular, something that hasn't happened with me yet. Not that I am too worried at this stage. One of the tall white beings said to me on the day that 9/11 that my life was going to take some dramatic twists and turns. completely alone, but I had to trust that the tall whites would be there even if I could not see them for a time. This war scenario is what we are on the brink of right now. It seems to be a part of our timeline, but the tall whites are attempting to shift the outcome. I don't think that the changed outcome will be a clean of the conflict, like the double slit photon experiment. The tall by measuring or observing.
Now, like the double slit experiment, humans will determine the outcome. Do you view these things you hear with fear and absolute truth that they will happen? Or do you view them as something we can overcome and thwart? Because thought is powerful. And the odds of probability prove that in the double slit experiment. Who do you think you are? Because that matters. Who do you know you are? Because that matters. It affects matter. It affects our outcomes. And yes, we could very well create a nuclear event if all of our collective thoughts as a whole weigh the scales that direction. Mind your thoughts. Wake up and pay attention.
And now it may seem as if the tall whites have a crystal ball and can see the future that way. But I think of it like psychic math or science. There are metrics that can be applied to future events. AI will be showing us more of that possibility soon,
AI
I am
mimics
sure.
you and your
If you've ever listened to
ability.
someone like geopolitical expert Peter Zeihan, he talks about geopolitics, and he is someone with the right data set
Geopolitics.
and the right kind of based on data and
As they can.
facts.
There's also a Merlin project that can do the same. It's a quantitative figure on which way the scales lean. Do you believe in yourself and your true powers that God gave you? Or do you believe that you are meek and limited and at their mercy? The choice is up to you. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a bit so this doesn't run too terribly long. And I hope that as you step away from the ending of this video, that your true takeaway is reevaluating exactly who you are.
Whole planet to waking up to the fact that they have never been told the truth ever. That we are the product of genetic
And
hybridization.
we've been waiting for it.
Humans are just like the tall whites, the Nordics, the Greys. Then there are the big reptilians that are supposed to be so dangerous,
Yeah.
and the insects that are supposed to be so hostile that President Reagan was introduced to in that Camp David meeting in March 6th to 8th, 1981. So the facets have been there. They've been around us. It's like, and Ian, is there anybody who has now communicated anything specifically? Vivid dream.
And that's where we're going to leave that. I'll provide the link if you want to listen to the entire episode that she has to offer here. And as far as the comment about the reptilians being a true adversary, I'll concur. But that does not mean that they are unstoppable or undefeatable. I know this for a fact too. They are, yes, a worthy opponent to anyone who does not have the strength of the will within. For anyone who does not know and own the worth of who they are. But for those of us that do, they can't hold a candle. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for viewing this podcast and listening. Thank you for waking up. And until the next time, be well and be blessed in love and light.